Litter and a variety of other undigestible debris, such as plastic bale wrap, can cause reduced performance, carcass damage, and in some cases, health issues that can result in the death of cattle or other ruminant animals that might ingest those materials. Recently, Christine Gelley, Ag and Natural Resources Educator for Ohio State University Extension in Noble County, shared an in depth look at the problems that can result when ruminants and horses ingest undigestible materials. Since at the time of the presentation, all of OSU Extension was working from home as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, we joined Christine on her back porch for that presentation.
So for those of you who have viewed the noon presentation from today, we talked some about litter and the issues that that can cause for livestock if it's accidentally consumed. And we're going to continue on with that topic tonight with a PowerPoint about the stomach obstructions of livestock. Now, litter is one contributing cause, but another is accidental ingestion of items that are in the area where we feed our animals. So one of the large contributors to stomach obstructions is the wrap that is on our hay bales. So we need to be really careful about making sure we get the wrap off of our hay when we feed it. That includes your plastic wrap, your net wrap, even twine can cause some issues. So be diligent about removing that when you're feeding hay to livestock and other types of feeds as well. Sometimes it can be hard to sort out and accidents happen and curious animals tend to taste a lot of things that maybe they shouldn't. And it can be really difficult to recognize when you have an issue with the stomach obstruction. So we're going to go through that PowerPoint today, share some helpful resources with you so you can help understand the digestive process, how things tend to accumulate in the rumen. We're going to mainly talk about ruminant animals, not monogastrics today. So this is cattle, sheep, goats, horses a little bit. So horses are technically a hindgut fermenter. So their digestive system is a little bit different, but we also have issues with them having obstructions as well. So let's dive into that PowerPoint. So for those of you who may have attended our Farm Talk Breakfast series in the past, in December, this was our topic at Farm Talk Breakfast. And we had a guest there at breakfast with us, Purnell Saling of Saling's Custom Meats in Caldwell. And Purnell brought along with him some show and tell items that they have found in the stomachs of livestock that they've processed there at their shop. And it was really interesting to see the size and the shape of those items. And we really appreciate the time he took to come to that meeting with us. So this is a repeat of that PowerPoint presentation. And within it, there are some links to some YouTube videos and also a helpful article. And I will show you the links to those, but we're not going to watch the entire videos. One, because the internet connection's not super great. And two, if you're interested in those topics, I encourage you to pursue those on your own so that you can watch and learn at your own speed. So let's move on. First off, let's talk about digestion and what a healthy digestive system does. Well, digestion in its own is a very complex process, and in ruminant animals, there are many steps of how food gets digested. So in order for us to evaluate our livestock's well-being and care for them and feed them properly, we need to understand how digestion works. And one of the first introductions for me to animal nutrition and feeding was this textbook written by Dr. Kevin Pond. It's an excellent textbook. When I was at the University of Tennessee and took my first animal nutrition course, this was the book that we studied, and it is still inside by my desk. I still consult it for advice on all types of animal nutrition. And a wonderful thing that he did was create a series of videos that go along with the chapters of the book. And that is what I'm going to show you while we do this. So let's go preview these videos. You might hear the sound before you see the image because I'm going to have to switch my screen share here. And what you see here are links. As I hover my mouse over them, you can see the YouTube links. I'm going to copy all those and post them in the description when this video is posted, so you'll be able to find those later on. So let's first look at prehension. These videos go all the way through prehension, which is how the animal gets the food, puts it into their system, then the different digestive tracts, and then more specifics about ruminant animals. So first off, I'll just show you this prehension video.
The prehension of food is the way they eat food with our hands and bring it to our mouth. In the case of a horse, for instance, the organ of prehension is its lip. The upper lip and lower lip will sort the grain or sort the grass and will be selecting what they want to consume, bringing it to the mouth, and then consuming it. If we compare that to a cow, the organ of prehension in a cow is the tongue. It will take its tongue, will extend it from its mouth, wrap it around the forage or grass that it's trying to consume, bring it back into the mouth, bite it, and consume it.
So that's a general description of what prehension is. And you'll notice when you look at these YouTube videos that they are produced by this Beef Elite YouTube channel. So that's a sign that you're in the right place. And this video itself is 14 minutes long. It goes through a whole chapter of anatomy. So the other links will be posted. They go more in depth, like I mentioned. And at this point, I'll stop sharing. But those are some excellent resources that you can consult to learn more about digestive systems in general. Let's go back to the PowerPoint now. And let's go to the next slide. So why are we concerned about stomach obstructions? The biggest reason we're concerned is because they prohibit digestion. So anytime we have an obstruction in the digestive system somewhere, it prevents the next step from happening. Depending on the size and the material that's causing the blockage, your animals could experience a range of symptoms that go all the way from just mild irritation to not wanting to eat, to diarrhea or watery stool, and even progress as far as suffocation, and in extreme cases, starvation. So hopefully, we want to pay attention and catch those signs before we have an incident where we lose an animal because of a stomach obstruction. That would be our worst case scenario. But sadly, it does happen. And one of the reasons why it goes overlooked is because these animals don't act sick. They don't have fevers. At the beginning, they tend to act pretty normal. But over time, they may start to lose condition. They may eat less, and they may start to exclude themselves from the group. So often by the times we notice that something is wrong with them, the issue has already progressed quite a ways. So we need to make sure that we do address this in a timely manner if we are able. And we understand that everybody tries to do their best with their livestock, and it's easy to miss an issue like this. But if we realize that there is an issue, try to deal with it as timely as possible so that that animal could still go into the food chain in some way, whether that's just for your family or into the traditional market. We want to make sure that we take the animal in for processing on our standards and don't lose that because we unfortunately lost the animal. This picture shows you an example of something that Purnell found in a steer. This is a section of garden hose. And this steer had a tendency to chew on things, very curious animal. And the owners had found chunks of the garden hose, but didn't really know where the rest of it went. And then at processing, they found it. So this chunk of garden hose is nearly a foot long, so about 12 inches of garden hose that had been trapped in the stomach of this animal. And what we have now are some examples of how that obstruction actually damaged the cuts of meat. So there's a lot of scar tissue here because that garden hose was rubbing on the loin of the animal. And it's when you have the scar tissue, it makes that cut of meat unmarketable. So it can cause issues with the value of this cut. And what you'll see here on the picture is this side of the T-bone is missing a lot of meat, and that had to be cut out because of the scar tissue. So this animal was consumed by the family, so they can understand. But if you were shopping for this animal, if you were shopping for this cut of meat in the grocery store, and you saw this T-bone next to another T-bone, you're obviously going to choose the other one because there's more meat on that cut. So this is a practical example of how those issues can reduce the marketability of the animals, even when the obstruction doesn't cause death. So how can we recognize a blockage when it's happening and before we lose that animal? Some of the things we might observe are a decrease in feed intake, the occurrence of diarrhea, changes in body condition. So the animals are not where they should be. In order to know how to judge body condition, we need to know how to judge body condition scores, which is a whole different topic that we're not going to get into tonight. But be familiar with how your animals should look at a certain stage of life. And if they aren't looking like they should, it's time to inquire about why. Bloat can also be a sign. So if the obstruction is preventing the release of gas, then the animal is going to have bloat. So that could be attributed to a lot of other things in our ecosystem, but that is one of the potential symptoms that we see. Often, we don't know what the true cause is until slaughter time. Some of the issues with that are, even when you do an ultrasound, sometimes these blockages can look just like plant material in the rumen. So it can be difficult to distinguish whether something in the rumen is plastic or twine, or if it's actually plant material. Metal is usually easier to distinguish. It will show up on the ultrasound, but those net wraps, plastic wraps, and twines are very hard to distinguish on an ultrasound. So in order to prevent those blockages, we need to make sure we're fully removing the wrap material from our hay bales. We need to scout for litter in our hay fields and our pastures before we do harvest and before we turn animals in to graze. As I mentioned, you'd think that animals would be smart enough to know not to eat an aluminum can or not to eat a plastic bag, but animals are curious and sometimes they ingest things that they shouldn't. It's up to us as managers to scout for those potential hazards. In order to help you with that mission, we need to communicate this message with our friends and our neighbors, okay, and our fellow livestock managers so that we can reduce littering in our communities. Litter is a serious matter that we need to address. It causes issues for animal welfare. And there are a lot of ways that we can litter inadvertently. A lot of people like to do balloon releases as part of celebrations. It sounds like a wonderful idea. It's very visually stimulating, and it can be very beautiful. But what goes up must come down. And often those balloons are not biodegradable, and they can be ingested either by wildlife or domestic livestock. And often when they consume light things like that that will float to the top of the rumen, they can prohibit the release of gas. And then eventually they can fall to the bottom side of the rumen and block flow of material from one compartment of the stomach to the next. So we need to communicate our concerns and why they matter to the people who are around us to make a lasting impression on how our landscape looks and the safety of our animals. And I'm going to share my screen, a different screen again, to show you where you can find the article that has additional details in it. And what you'll see here is that this article is displayed on the Beef Cattle newsletter. And you can see photos here. This is a ball of hair that Purnell found in the stomach of an animal. When asked the question of how many animals that they process actually come in with stomach obstructions, his guess was about 5% have an obstruction of some kind. So we go more into detail about the digestive system here, things to be concerned about, and then also how to deal with litter. So aside from being unsightly, litter is very expensive because it costs us a lot of money to go out and clean it up. It's also a crime. So if you know that somebody is continuing to litter in your community, there are steps that you can take to at least discourage the activity, if not prosecute them for breaking the law. You can find out more about those laws in this article and by clicking these links. Your wildlife officer is able to write tickets for littering, and I know that our Noble County officer is very in tune with littering. And one of the ways that maybe you can work uh, to address littering, if you have somebody that chronically litters on your property, is to put up some trail cams so that you can actually get evidence of who's littering, when, and what it is. And then you can use that as evidence when you make your reports for littering and help track those patterns. So we hope that that's not the case that you're experiencing, but we also know that that is reality. And let me go back here to the PowerPoint again. We'll move on a little bit. What we see here in this chart is some research out of North Dakota State University, where they purposefully had animals ingest different types of hay bale materials and what happened when they were ingested. So the red line here is hay. The yellow line is sessile twine. The light blue line is net wrap. The purple line is net wrap. The green line is net wrap. And the blue line is biodegradable twine. And what you can see here is that the sessile twine by far stood the best chance of making it out of the rumen, but all of the other types of bale wrapping did not. Almost never did it actually come out of the animal, pass through the digestive system. And what actually can happen then, if those materials are made out of plastic, they can bind together in the rumen. This is an example of plastic twine wrapped into the other plant material that was in the rumen, causing a blockage. And if you looked at that on an ultrasound, you would not be able to see that twine. And what we see here in a picture is a plastic ball of net wrap that has now melted together because of the warmth inside the animal. And then we have a solid blockage, and that could cause a severe obstruction in the digestive system that could lead to death. So these are real life examples of stomach obstructions that do occur and likely occur among our livestock as well, but we may not ever notice. So be aware, talk with people in your community about littering. While you're practicing social distancing right now during this time, it's a great idea to go out and do a litter walk, try to clean up your communities, and make it a regular habit to scout your fields before you harvest and bale hay. And even when you mow your lawn, even if you don't have livestock and you happen to be listening all the way through this program, wildlife are at risk as well. So are pets. So we all should do our part to prevent littering, keep Ohio beautiful. I hope that you'll inquire into those other resources provided. And if you have additional questions, please feel free to contact me either by phone, email, or on the Facebook page. Happy to help you however we can. Thank you and have a wonderful weekend.